The legend of Robert the Doll. I never believed in curses. Ghosts, spirits, haunted objects, they were the stuff of campfire tales and late-night horror movies, not real life. So when I found myself standing in front of a glass case in a dimly lit room at the East Mertella Museum in Key West, Florida, I didn't expect anything more than a quaint story to share with my friends. But the doll inside the case was different. Its eyes, painted a deep black, seemed to follow me as I moved. This was Robert the Doll, infamous for bringing misfortune to those who dared disrespect him. The museum was nearly empty that humid afternoon, save for a few curious tourists and a security guard who watched us with a bored expression. My heart thumped against my ribs as I approached Robert, his sailor suit yellowed with age, his face cracked and weathered. He clutched a small, worn-out stuffed lion, his companion through the ages. The story of Robert was legendary in Key West. In the early 1900s, he was given to a young boy named Robert Eugene Otto by a Bahamian servant skilled in voodoo. From the moment he arrived at the Otto household, strange occurrences began to unfold. Furniture overturned, eerie giggles echoed through the halls, and objects moved on their own. Eugene, as the boy was known, claimed Robert was behind it all. As I stood there, my eyes locked on Robert's, I recalled the tales of those who had visited before me. A chill ran down my spine as I remembered the warnings: never take his picture without asking for permission, never mock him, and always treat him with respect. For those who failed to do so, misfortune followed, a string of car accidents, broken relationships, illnesses. Some even claimed to hear Robert's voice in their nightmares, a low, malicious whisper that would not cease. I glanced around, ensuring no one was watching, and lifted my phone to snap a picture. Just as my finger hovered over the button, the room seemed to shift, the shadows deepening as the air grew heavier. I hesitated, my mind wrestling with disbelief and an unshakable sense of dread. "Please, Robert, may I take your picture?" I muttered under my breath, feeling absurd. I waited for a moment, and when nothing happened, I clicked the button. The flash illuminated Robert's face for a split second, and in that instant, his expression seemed to change. The corners of his mouth, once sewn in a neutral line, appeared to curl into a sinister smirk. I shook my head, dismissing it as a trick of the light. As I turned to leave, the glass case rattled. I froze, my heart skipping a beat. The sound was subtle yet unmistakable, like fingernails scraping against the inside. I spun back, my eyes widening. Robert remained motionless, yet the feeling that something was terribly wrong gnawed at my gut. That night, back at my hotel, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Shadows danced in the corners of my room, and the air was thick with an oppressive tension. I tried to laugh it off as paranoia, a side effect of spending too much time in a museum filled with haunted artifacts. But as I lay in bed, the memories of the day replaying in my mind, sleep eluded me. Then came the sound, a faint giggle, echoing through the room like a sinister lullaby. I bolted upright, my skin prickling with fear. The laugh was unmistakable, chilling me to my core. My eyes darted around the darkened room, searching for the source. The shadows seemed to thicken, coalescing into a form at the foot of my bed. The shape was small, childlike, with an unmistakable silhouette: Robert. I blinked, and he was gone, leaving only an echo of that eerie giggle behind. I knew then that I had made a grave mistake. The real horror was just beginning. As dawn broke, I was determined to find answers. I couldn't escape the feeling that Robert was more than just a doll, that something malevolent lingered within those glass eyes. The stories I'd heard had become my reality, and the legend of Robert the Doll was far from over. With a shiver of apprehension, I packed my bags and set out to learn the truth behind Robert's curse. Little did I know, the horrors awaiting me would defy explanation and test my very sanity. Determined to unravel the mystery of Robert the Doll, I spent the morning scouring the streets of Key West, seeking out anyone who might shed light on his dark origins. The sun blazed overhead, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper secrets of their own. My mind was a whirlwind of questions, haunted by the memories of the night before. I made my way to the heart of Old Town, where the homes were adorned with vibrant colors and intricate ironwork, each corner echoing with the stories of those who had come before. My first stop was a quaint bookstore, its walls lined with dusty tomes and faded photographs capturing the island's storied history. The owner, a wiry old man with a shock of white hair and a knowing smile, seemed to sense my purpose before I spoke a word. As I approached the counter, he peered over his reading glasses, eyes twinkling with a mixture of amusement and curiosity. "You're here about Robert, aren't you?" he asked, his voice carrying the weight of countless tales shared over the years. I nodded, feeling a surge of hope. "Yes, I need to understand what's happening to me. I visited him yesterday, and since then, strange things have been happening." The old man chuckled, a sound that was both reassuring and unsettling. "You're not the first, and you certainly won't be the last. Robert has a way of making his presence known." He motioned for me to follow him into a dimly lit corner of the shop, where he pulled a leather-bound book from the shelf. Its spine was cracked with age, the pages yellowed and delicate. As he opened it, the musky scent of history filled the air. "This is the journal of Robert Eugene Otto," he explained, "the boy who first owned the doll. It's said to contain some of the earliest accounts of Robert's unusual behavior." My heart raced as I leaned in to read. The entries were penned in a child's scrawl, each one brimming with a mix of innocence and fear. Eugene spoke of the doll as though it were alive, recounting the conversations they shared and the pranks Robert would play on the unsuspecting household staff. But as the journal progressed, the tone shifted. Eugene's entries grew darker, tinged with desperation. He described waking in the night to find Robert standing at the foot of his bed, watching him with unblinking eyes. He spoke of whispers in the dark and of objects moving without explanation. The most chilling entry, however, came near the end of the journal. March 3, 1914 _ Mother says I shouldn't be afraid, but Robert is angry. He says we must leave the house, or he will do something terrible. I hear him at night, talking to someone who isn't there. I think it's the shadows. They want him to hurt us. _ A cold shiver ran down my spine as I read the words, the echoes of Eugene's fear reaching across the decades. The shadows. I remembered the shadowy figure I had seen last night, and a knot of dread tightened in my chest. "Did anything happen to Eugene?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The old man sighed, closing the journal with a gentle thud. "He grew up, moved away, but never escaped Robert's influence. Even as an adult, he claimed the doll haunted him. When he died, he left strict instructions for Robert to be locked away, hoping to contain whatever malevolence lurked within. But why? What makes Robert so different?" I pressed, eager for answers. The old man paused, his expression grave. "Some say the servant who gave Eugene the doll was wronged by the family. They believe she used dark magic to bind a spirit to the doll, a spirit filled with anger and malice." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Others claim the spirit isn't human at all. They speak of something older, something that feeds on fear and chaos." My skin prickled at the thought, the room suddenly feeling colder. I needed to know more, to find a way to rid myself of Robert's curse. But as I left the bookstore, I couldn't shake the feeling that my actions had set something in motion, a chain of events that could not be easily undone. I knew I had to return to the museum, to confront Robert and seek whatever truth lay buried in his haunted past. But fear gnawed at me, a persistent whisper at the back of my mind. With the sun sinking low on the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the streets, I headed back toward the East Mertella Museum, unaware of the horrors that awaited me. As night descended upon Key West, the island took on an unsettling stillness. The ocean breeze rustled the palm trees, casting flickering shadows across the cobblestone streets. Each step toward the East Mertella Museum was heavy with anticipation, as if the very air were charged with a malevolent energy. I couldn't shake the feeling that unseen eyes watched my every move. When I reached the museum, it was closed to visitors, the gates locked and the windows dark. But my urgency was undeniable. I needed answers, no matter the cost. I circled the perimeter, scanning for an entry point. The back of the building was less secure, a small window left ajar. I hesitated only briefly before hoisting myself up and slipping inside, landing with a soft thud on the creaky wooden floor. The museum was eerily quiet, each sound amplified in the silence, the distant creak of floorboards, the soft hum of the air conditioning. Shadows draped the exhibits, transforming benign relics into ominous specters. Robert's display was just ahead, his glass case the centerpiece in a room dedicated to the island's haunted history. As I approached, I felt an inexplicable pull toward the doll, his eyes seemingly alive with dark intent. I stood before Robert, my breath catching in my throat. His expression was unchanged, yet there was something different, a palpable tension that radiated from his stitched smile. "Robert," I whispered, the words sounding foolish even to my own ears. "I'm sorry for disturbing you. I just need to understand." A sudden gust of cold air swept through the room, sending a shiver down my spine. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and the sensation of being watched intensified. I glanced around, expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows, but there was no one. My gaze returned to Robert, and my heart skipped a beat. The doll had moved. Subtly, almost imperceptibly, his head had turned slightly to the side, his eyes now fixed on mine with an unsettling intensity. Panic surged through me as the laugh grew louder, more menacing. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, surrounding me in a cacophony of eerie mirth. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. Silence answered, thick and oppressive. I felt a presence behind me and whirled around, only to find myself alone in the room. Yet the feeling of being watched persisted, a crawling sensation across my skin. Desperation clawed at me. I needed to end this, to break whatever curse had taken hold. The old man's words echoed in my mind, "Dark magic, a spirit bound to the doll." My eyes darted to the nearby display cases, seeking anything that might offer a clue, a solution. I spotted an old newspaper article pinned beneath glass, its headline yellowed with age, "Tragic fire claims life of local woman, suspected voodoo practitioner." The article detailed the mysterious death of a woman believed to be the servant who had given Robert to Eugene. Her home had burned to the ground, the fire ruled accidental. But whispers of vengeance and witchcraft lingered, tales of her spirit seeking justice against those who had wronged her. The pieces began to fall into place, and a chilling realization gripped me. If the spirit within Robert was the woman's, her fury had not diminished with time. I had unwittingly invoked her wrath by intruding upon Robert's domain. But how to appease her? How to break free from the curse? A noise snapped me from my thoughts, a low creak, followed by a soft thump. I turned back to the glass case, my heart racing. Robert was gone. The case was empty, the glass smeared with tiny handprints. Terror gripped me as I searched the room, the shadows deepening, twisting into grotesque shapes. A sharp pain erupted in my head, like ice driving into my skull. I stumbled back, clutching my temples as a voice whispered through the haze of agony, a voice that was neither male nor female, but something ancient and terrible. "You must pay," it hissed, the words like shards of glass in my mind. I collapsed to the floor, darkness closing in. My last conscious thought was a single, terrifying certainty: the curse had awakened, and it would not rest until it was sated. The weight of the decision I faced lingered in the air as I left the museum and stepped into the cool night. The streets of Key West were quiet, but my mind was anything but. The ritual demanded a life to be set free, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pulled into a darkness far beyond my understanding. I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. As I walked through the dimly lit streets, I remembered a local legend about a woman named Isabella, known as the Bone Lady. She lived on the outskirts of town and was rumored to have ties to the supernatural. If anyone could guide me through the web of curses and spirits, it was her. I reached Isabella's house, a small, weathered cottage nestled among tangled trees and creeping vines. An eerie aura surrounded it, as if the very land knew it was a place where the line between the living and the dead was blurred. I hesitated at the doorstep, then knocked, the sound echoing ominously in the stillness. After a long moment, the door creaked open to reveal Isabella, a tall woman with piercing green eyes that seemed to see straight through to my soul. She regarded me silently for a moment before stepping aside, wordlessly inviting me into her home. The interior was dimly lit, filled with the scent of herbs and incense. Shelves lined the walls, cluttered with jars and trinkets of all kinds, each one telling a story of its own. "You've tangled with Robert," she said, her voice smooth and resonant, like the rustle of leaves in a storm. "And now the curse has found you." I nodded, the tension in my chest easing slightly in her presence. "I need to know how to end it. The doll. The spirit inside. It's asking for freedom. But it wants a sacrifice." Isabella studied me, her eyes narrowing with a mixture of curiosity and caution. The curse was woven with vengeance and pain. Undoing it will not be easy, nor without consequence. She motioned for me to sit at a table cluttered with candles and crystals. As she began to prepare a brew of herbs and whispered incantations, she explained the origins of the curse in greater detail. The woman who gave Robert to Eugene Otto was indeed skilled in voodoo, Isabella began, her voice steady and calm. She was wronged by the family, dismissed without cause, and her reputation tarnished. She sought justice through the only means she had, a binding spell, tethering her spirit to the doll to ensure her story would never be forgotten. But why does it require a sacrifice? I asked, the question burning within me. Spirits tethered by rage cannot be released without balance. The scales must be tipped, one life for another. But there is a way to appease her without bloodshed. Hope flickered within me. How? The ritual must be performed, but not with death, Isabella replied. Instead, you must offer something of equal value, a memory, a piece of your soul. Something deeply personal that you can never reclaim. The idea was terrifying, yet it felt like the only path forward. But what could I possibly offer that would satisfy a spirit's thirst for justice? Isabella seemed to read my thoughts. You must face your deepest fear, confront the darkness within you. Only then can the curse be broken. She handed me a small pouch filled with herbs, instructing me to use them in the ritual. These will guide you, but you must find your own way through the shadows. Only then will you learn the truth of your connection to Robert. As I left Isabella's home, the night seemed to close in around me, the shadows whispering secrets I couldn't yet understand. My heart pounded with a mixture of fear and determination. Returning to the museum felt like stepping into a different world, where the rules of reality no longer applied. The air was thick with tension as I prepared the ritual, arranging the candles and herbs in a circle around Robert's empty case. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply as I centered myself. The words of the chant rose unbidden to my lips, the melody haunting and powerful. I could feel the presence of the spirit, a palpable force that seemed to echo through the museum. As the ritual progressed, the air grew colder, the shadows deepening and swirling around me. I felt the pull of the spirit, the weight of its pain and anger pressing down upon me. My mind filled with visions, flashes of a lifelong past, moments of joy and sorrow, love and loss. I saw glimpses of the woman's life, her struggles, her injustices. And then, a memory that wasn't mine, but hers, a figure shrouded in darkness, watching as the flames consumed her home. The realization struck like a bolt of lightning. In that life, I was the one who had wronged her. I was the cause of her suffering, the reason she sought vengeance from beyond the grave. Tears streamed down my face as the weight of guilt and regret crashed over me. I had to make amends, to find a way to right the wrongs of the past. With trembling hands, I reached into the depths of my soul, searching for a piece of myself to offer, a memory so precious it would suffice. I found it, a moment of pure happiness, a cherished memory of my childhood that had given me strength through life's challenges. As I offered it up, the shadows around me shifted, swirling into a vortex of light and darkness. The room filled with a blinding radiance, and I felt the spirit's presence lift, a whisper of gratitude echoing in my mind. When the light faded, the room was silent once more. Robert sat in his case, his eyes now empty and lifeless. The curse had been lifted, and the spirit was free. But as I stumbled out into the night, I knew the story was not over. The echoes of the past lingered in my mind, a reminder of the darkness that lay within us all. The weight of what I had done settled heavily on my shoulders as I left the museum and wandered back into the streets of Key West. The sun was beginning to rise, casting a warm glow over the island, but inside, I felt cold and empty. The sacrifice I had made, giving up a cherished memory, left an aching void, but I took solace in knowing that the spirit was free, her thirst for justice finally quenched. As I made my way back to my hotel, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still amiss. The ritual had ended, the curse was lifted, but an unsettling sense of incompleteness lingered in the air. The shadows seemed to cling to me, whispering secrets I couldn't quite decipher. That night, exhausted and emotionally drained, I fell into a deep sleep. My dreams were vivid and disorienting, filled with the echoes of the past, images of the woman and her fiery demise, of Robert, watching silently with those cold, black eyes. But there was something else, something new, a figure emerging from the shadows, its face obscured, yet hauntingly familiar. It beckoned to me, urging me to follow deeper into the darkness. I awoke with a start, my heart racing, the morning light streaming through the window. The dream clung to my mind like a lingering fog, refusing to dissipate. There was something I was missing, something crucial I needed to understand. Determined to uncover the truth, I returned to the East Mertello Museum one last time. The building was quiet, the halls empty and still. Robert's case stood as it always had, the doll inside now just a lifeless figure, no longer the vessel of a malevolent spirit. But as I approached, a chill crept over me, the air growing heavy and oppressive. My eyes were drawn to the glass, where a faint reflection shimmered in the morning light. It was my own face, but twisted and distorted, like a funhouse mirror reflecting back a dark, hidden truth. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the shadows in the room seemed to pulse with a life of their own. I felt a presence behind me, a cold, creeping sensation that crawled up my spine. I turned slowly, my breath catching in my throat. There, in the center of the room, stood the figure from my dream. It was shrouded in darkness, its form shifting and flickering like a candle flame. The air crackled with energy, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice barely a whisper. The figure stepped forward, the shadows peeling away to reveal a face that was achingly familiar. It was my own. But there was something different about it, a malevolence lurking beneath the surface. "I am you," the figure said, its voice echoing with a haunting, ethereal quality. "I am the darkness you tried to bury, the past you sought to forget." My mind reeled as the implications sank in. The curse hadn't just been about Robert or the woman, it had been about me, about the darkness within my own soul. I had been the architect of my own misfortune, the shadows in my mind manifesting as a curse that demanded resolution. The figure reached out, its hand brushing against my chest, and suddenly, memories flooded through me, memories of a life I had long since buried. I saw myself in the past, the person I had once been, a person capable of great cruelty and malice. I was the one who had wronged the woman, who had set her on a path of vengeance that transcended death. And I had paid the price, over and over, in every life that followed, haunted by the shadows of my own making. "You have faced the darkness," the figure said, its eyes locking onto mine with a piercing intensity. "Now you must accept it." As I stood there, the truth finally laid bare, I realized that the only way to truly break the curse was to accept the darkness within me, to acknowledge the sins of the past and make peace with them. With a deep breath, I closed my eyes, allowing the memories to wash over me. I saw the pain I had caused, the lives I had touched in ways I never intended. But I also saw the potential for redemption, the chance to make things right. When I opened my eyes, the figure was gone, the room returned to its normal state. The shadows had receded, the oppressive weight lifted from my chest. I felt lighter, as if a burden I had carried for lifetimes had finally been released. The curse was broken, not through sacrifice or ritual, but through acceptance and understanding. The darkness within me had been acknowledged, its power over me diminished. As I left the museum for the final time, I knew that the story of Robert the doll and the spirit that haunted him had reached its conclusion. But the echoes of the past would remain, a reminder of the choices we make and the paths we choose to walk. And as I walked into the light of a new day, I felt a sense of hope, a renewed determination to live a life that honored the lessons I had learned, to use my past as a guide toward a brighter future. The legend of Robert the doll had come to an end, but the journey of self-discovery and redemption had only just begun.